month on Focus, Black Oklahoma.
Join us as we examine the significance of the United States of America's 250th birthday and what freedom and citizenship can mean.
Rethink what disability looks like when many health conditions are invisible to the public eye.
Continue our coverage on the significance of somatic therapy on Black bodies.
Hear a segment of our special episode, Mental Health on the Margins.
And listen to Clara Luper and her daughter, Marilyn Luper Hildreth, reflect on their entry into the civil rights movement in Oklahoma. All of this and more on Focus, Black Oklahoma.
Focus Black Oklahoma is sponsored by the Black Church Traditions and African American Faith Life program at Phillips Seminary, offering a master's degree in social justice online and in person. Learn more at wherefaithleads.com.
This is Focus, Black Oklahoma. I'm Jacob Littlebear.
And I'm Dr. Autumn Brown. Recently, the United States marked its 250th birthday and celebrated the 4th of July. While many Americans reflected on the nation's founding ideals of freedom, liberty, and independence, for others, the holiday raised more complicated questions. FBO's Roma Carter explores the varied meanings of America's 250th anniversary, examining how Indigenous and Black communities engage with the nation's past, commemorate their own histories, and envision a more inclusive understanding of what freedom and citizenship can mean.
As the United States' 250th anniversary of independence passes, the U.S. is left with a question: what's next? On July 4th, 1776, the founding fathers of the United States declared independence from Great Britain to create a new nation, one dedicated to freedom of the people. As listed in the Bill of Rights, these freedoms were written as law for a burgeoning new nation. Yet, who is given rights within the Declaration of Independence? Notably, it intentionally leaves out rights to Black Americans and Indigenous people, explicitly referring to Native people as, quote, merciless Indian savages, end quote, within the document. With systemic racism ingrained deep within the ideological creation of this country, current administration, and a broad imperialist culture, it begs the timely question: who's benefiting from America's 250th anniversary of independence? In the Declaration of Independence, the writers display egalitarian promises, using language such as all men are created equal and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. But with a country built from the economic exploitation of African labor and forced removal and extermination of indigenous communities, the patriotic day of celebration in this nation, displayed with fireworks, spiked punch, and hot dogs, amidst a foggy representation of what exactly is celebrated. Clara Miracle, a queer Mohawk poet and executive director of the Tulsa-based indigenous nonprofit Words of the People, shares their perspective on this national holiday.
As someone who, I'll say this, from a lot of different positions, as someone who is experienced and is a survivor of gun violence, the 4th historically has been really difficult for me. And my brother, who is a veteran as well, always has, issues with the 4th. And we talk about how ironic it is that this celebration of freedom feels so violent for people that, have survived violence in this country or for this country. So in a personal context, has been a difficult holiday for me. On a larger context, the 4th is still a celebration of violence.
A poll conducted by the Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs Research found that 47% of adults see the American flag as unifying, whereas 16% see it as divisive. Within this group, Republican older white men were the most reported to see the symbol of the American flag as, quote, unifying, and further reinforce the American dream to be true. Traditionally, the demographic of people who think positively of the American flag have been the ones who receive the benefits from its proclaimed symbol of prosperity. But for Miracle, the symbol of the American flag registers a completely different message.
I'm trying to remember the artist who said that. It's a Native artist, that every American flag is a warning sign. And I've always felt that way. That when I see someone who like flies a flag, or, all of that, I'm like, I immediately know and understand or have an idea probably of what that person's ideology is. We deserve, to be joyous and to celebrate. I think there's a lack of understanding of what you're celebrating when you celebrate independence for this country and what that means, right? Independence for who and from who. I think that disrupting the 4th, it's time. We're at 250 years, and which isn't a long time, but in 250 years we've devolved to this place. We've devolved to living under racialized capitalism and a very divided country when really, the enemy is fascism.
Disrupting the 250th anniversary of this nation is a common thread among anti-colonialist, anti-capitalist, and marginalized communities who recognize the United States has often not worked for them and that there needs to be a serious shift. Miracle remarks,
"We're not free in so many ways. Our food is poisoned. Our air is poisoned. Oklahoma, they found PMCC chemicals that haven't been discovered anywhere else in North America that are damaging to the human body are found here. Our water is being threatened to be used for data centers. We're not free because the land is not free." How we disrupt that is by resisting. That, I think, begins with educating people, educating our families, educating our friends, educating ourselves. Educate yourselves on the history of the land, whose land you're on the history of this country, on this people, the people who are doing the work. I think it's important that we tell our personal stories, but also the larger stories of who we are and where we come from. And to understand that America existed before all of this. And the original people that were here, are Americans, are the original people of this land. And to understand where your ancestors came from, too, is a good disruption.
As Miracle notes, for some citizens, there is an increased need to reckon with America's past 250 years in a concerted effort to create a cultural change for the next 250 years. The Day One movement is doing exactly that. Sparked by an urgency from Black and Indigenous organizers nationally, the movement opposes the hegemony that is settler colonialism and racism. Faye, a community organizer based in Washington, D.C., spoke at the launching of the Day One movement event on June 29, 2026, held on sovereign Lakota land in Haysapa, South Dakota.
The Day One movement is a solidarity campaign between Black and Indigenous communities. Understanding that if we uplift land back and reparations as our priority platforms, that all of us will live more free, dignified, sovereign lives. We're closing out 250 with actions, with confrontation, and looking forward, going into this new 250. What does it look like to actually root that in care? What does it look like to root that in a new culture where we don't value individualism over communalism? Where we decide that one person's injustice is also ours to take care of as well.
Day One prioritizes justice in regards to land back for Indigenous communities and reparations for Black communities, but they know it does not happen without intent and application. This is why they are moving quickly to spread this counter-narrative.
The main work of the Day One movement is cultural. And so even if you're not involved in a local reparations campaign, even if you're not involved in a local land back campaign, what are the ways that you can be working to shift how we even talk about those things in your community? Can you host a party that is using art to display how we could have land back? Can you plan a music event where you're talking about everything Black folks have contributed to the music industry, and therefore how, just making connections. Like, you can do so much of this in your own community. It doesn't have to look one way. It doesn't have to look like an action. It doesn't have to look like anything we've seen yet. And I think that's actually the power of Day One, is we have the ability to create some we've never seen. Each time Day One has come together to strategize, to think anew, we've brought in more people, we've brought in more voices, we've brought in more regions, states, cities. We have folks who are organizers, we have educators, we have parents, we have aunties, uncles, grandparents. We have people who have committed their life to movement work, and other people who have committed to something else. But we have, thankfully, a wide variety of people who see this as the way forward and see Day One as the way we can make meaningful cultural change in this country. We believe that together we're the majority, and we actually have the ability to radically change what the last 250 years of the United States has looked like to be a very different next 250, one that actually inherently values all of our people's worth.
By the time you're listening to this, the Day One movement has begun. As Faye emphasizes, anyone can be a part of this movement, whether you're involved in advocacy work or a person wanting to see and contribute to cultural change. For more information, check out their website and Essential Bill of Rights found at day1movement.org. For Focus Black Oklahoma, I'm Roma Carter in Black Hills, South Dakota.
Not every disability can be seen. While wheelchairs, service animals, and other visible markers often shape our understanding of disability, millions of people live with conditions that are largely invisible to those around them. Their stories challenge us to rethink what disability looks like and remind us that not all struggles are visible to the naked eye. Zaakirah Muhammad has the story.
According to the Center for Disease Control, or CDC, 1 in 4 people are disabled. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, it states that women are more likely than men to report a disability, and Black Americans experience disability at higher rates than other ethnic groups. About 30% of all women have a disability, compared with 11% of all men. For millions of Americans living with invisible chronic health conditions, the hardest part of the diagnosis isn't always the disease itself, it's being believed. Lisa C. Willis is a former WNBA basketball player and gold Olympic medalist turned mental performance coach in Austin, Texas. She said, the biggest barrier to success often isn't physical, it's the story we tell ourselves about our own minds. Willis spent a few years as a competitive basketball player, but she says talent alone never explained her gap between the players who thrived and those who didn't. Those experiences became the foundation of her coaching practice, Ballin' and Beyond.
It was the mental component for me that took my career to the next level. Just being able to deal with the criticism, the fast pace, communication, having to be resilient, still trying to feel worthy and valued in situations where that wasn't always directly communicated to you, dealing with pressure.
For Willis, disability pride starts with language, that is, accepting.
Disability, that's a word that I don't even necessarily use often, just because I like to look at it as people just being differently abled, having different abilities.
Willis speaks openly about invisible disabilities and the misunderstandings she once held about herself.
I think when we talk about invisible disabilities, some misconceptions were that you can't really be high functioning. I was thinking with people who might be depressed, or they might be anxious, or they might have ADHD, or all of these things. At one point, I thought that was like a strike. But the reality is that there are a lot of people who have these invisible disabilities, air quotes, that are like geniuses. I feel like there's so many people like that it's almost a prereq to be a genius.
Dr. Munira Bormani, MD, is a board-certified family medicine physician based between Cleveland, Ohio, and Nashville, Tennessee. She spent years in academic medicine before making a career shift, seeking out licenses in rural, underserved regions across the Midwest, where she now practices telehealth in what she calls healthcare deserts. Dr. Bormani said the crisis isn't just about access, it's cultural.
Americans are really good with stoicism. We're really good, especially in the Midwest, like we're hardy, we're used to steel and farming and endurance and enduring. And many people feel like the things that are negatively affecting their lives, they just have to endure. But they don't know that there's actually something that can be done to intervene. And it's also challenging when the rest of society doesn't see what is causing you so much pain and you feel like you have to endure it and just grin and bear it.
That endurance has a cost. Conditions that could have been caught early on go unmonitored for years. Dr. Bormani doesn't mince words about her own profession's role in that fight. She says trust between doctor and patient has to start with physician, checking biases at the door, especially with patients who look healthy on the outside but are struggling on the inside.
Every new patient encounter is a chance to change somebody's life, and that person walking in your door or logging on to that visit deserves the full respect and the full intention of actually hearing them out and getting to the bottom of their issue.
Willis also describes how race and gender compound these challenges, particularly working in male-dominated spaces as a Black woman.
The way that you see the world, the lens in which you see the world, if not properly handled, that could be serving as a disability for your mindset, which will then serve as a disability for your performance. Am I just a check box, or are they not listening to me because I'm a woman? Or if I had a bigger you-know-what, then would that help me out?
Willis shared what inclusion looks like to her.
An inclusive community looks like the freedom to do it your way. There are so many people that can do great things. They just might do it differently. So an inclusive community definitely has diversity of thought. It has diversity of experiences. It's expanding what we consider excellence to be, because sometimes excellence is right in front of us, but it just looks different.
Willis says if she could go back, she'd tell her younger self,
what I wish somebody would have told me was that I was already enough. And so that is my message to everybody. The way that you look, your mindset, you are enough for the things that you want to do. That doesn't negate any work that needs to be done in the future, but who you are right now is enough.
Medical insurance is a system Dr. Bormani calls the worst part of American healthcare. She describes hours-long calls, repeated denials, and a process that is exhausting. She offers advice on navigating the process and suggests a willingness to push back. When a claim is denied, she recommends asking insurers to put their reasoning in writing.
The only way that you can really get through that is with persistence, patience, and getting on the phone and making sure they document everything. So if they're denying something that you believe should be entitled to you, you must say, okay, I need you to document that you are denying me care for X because Y. And usually when you ask them to document things, miraculously your claims go through.
It's a fight, one that can take years to resolve. Despite the obstacles, Dr. Bormani's message to patients is ultimately one of resolve.
You are worthy, you are deserving of great care, and that you are entitled to a life of meaning. Do not allow other people's biases about you and your experience to prevent you from fighting for the care that you deserve. It's a heavy burden to bear, and it is exhausting and frustrating and can span the course of several years before you get answers. But at the end of the day, you deserve quality care, and don't let anyone tell you that you don't.
For those seeking care or guidance, Dr. Bomani can be found through a simple search for Dr. Munirah Bomani. That's MUNIRAHBOMANI, Family Medicine, or on Instagram, where she's launching a new project called Ask Dr. Mooney, or Ask Dr. MUNI, dedicated to helping patients and families advocate for themselves within the healthcare system. Lisa C. Willis is the founder of Ballin' Beyond Mental Performance Coaching, based in Austin, Texas. Learn more by visiting Ballin' Beyond, that's BALLINBEYOND.com, or by visiting lisacwillis.com. For Focus, Black Oklahoma, I'm Zaakirah Muhammad in New Orleans, Louisiana.
What's going on in your city? Black Oklahoma mind. What's going on in your city? That's black focused mind. What's going on in your city? Black Oklahoma mind.
You're listening to Focus, Black Oklahoma. Trauma doesn't just live in our memories, it lives in the body. For many Black people, generations of stress, survival, and systemic harm are carried in muscle, breath, and nervous systems long after the moment has passed. Somatic therapy asks a different kind of healing question. Not just what happened to you, but what is your body still holding? Alana Mbanza continues her coverage on somatic therapy and why reconnecting with the Black body is a powerful and often overlooked path toward restoration and wholeness.
In April's broadcast, we heard from two Tulsa-based practitioners. Artist Leandra Lesueur and holistic practitioner Melissa Williams shared how somatic therapy can offer healing that talk therapy alone can't always reach. This month, we go deeper into the science of why that work is necessary and what it can mean for communities carrying compounded generational stress. Prentice Hemphill, based in Durham, North Carolina, is the co-founder and co-director of the Embodiment Institute and the best-selling author of What It Takes to Heal: How Transforming Ourselves Can Heal the World. Their path to this work was not a straight line. It began with their own healing, moved through clinical training as a therapist, and eventually found its home in community and social movement spaces.
Well, I came to somatics and embodiment work years ago, I think around 2009 or so. And at that time, I was really deeply engaged in my own healing and my own kind of transformative work, what I wanted to do in the world, what my life was about. And I encountered somatics, I encountered embodiment, and it really changed my perspective on even what healing was and could be. And later I became a therapist and started doing that work in a more clinical setting. But I had always been committed to social change, to community work.
Around 2020, Hemphill and co-founder Kasha Ho launched the Embodiment Institute, creating intentional spaces for people who might never otherwise access this kind of healing work.
So that's what I was doing for many years in different places inside of, what we call social movement work. And around 2020, it was the summer of 2020 that the Embodiment Institute was formed, and I had done some support for organizers who were working on the ground around George Floyd's murder there, and I was trying to figure out how to offer all that I had learned about embodiment back to people, back to community, back to organizations, back to leaders.
Since then, they have reached thousands of people through their embodiment work. But what does embodiment actually mean? What we carry in the body is not only the residue of family patterns. For Black communities, the body has also absorbed generations of structural harm. Chronic stress from discrimination, economic pressure, and ongoing violence does not just weigh on the mind, it changes the body's chemistry, strains the heart, and over time, it shortens our lives. Hemphill describes exactly what that process looks like.
I mean, you talk about chronic stress. This is absolutely a major killer for us, and it shows up in so many different ways in our body. When you think about stress, one of the things that can happen to our bodies, when we are experiencing stress, we're going to get spikes in cortisol in our bodies. I mean, we fear we'll have a spike in adrenaline. Stress, that kind of chronic nature of stress, the worry of, can I do this? Do I have enough? The pressure of all of that, it actually creates spikes in certain hormones in our body that cause certain reactions. So tense muscles, change in how your heart functions. So over time, the spike in cortisol, a rapidly beating heart, all of that will wear your heart out. It will actually wear your heart out. So you'll have all those cardiac, that suite of things that happen to us, can happen through a lot of different factors, but certainly one of those is stress. Stress will wear your heart out over time. And it's going to increase your blood pressure, all of that, increase risk of all sorts of kinds of cardiac events.
Research also confirms what Hemphill describes. In 2024, the American Heart Association published a policy statement in its flagship journal, Circulation, identifying structural racism as a fundamental driver of health disparities in the United States and a direct cause of premature death from heart disease and stroke. The statement found that the largest recent increases in cardiovascular disease deaths were among Black, Asian, and Hispanic adults. Dr. Sierra Carter, an associate professor of clinical and community psychology at Georgia State University, has spent years documenting how that harm happens at the cellular level. Her research on what she calls the biological embedding of racism shows that early life exposure to racial stress puts Black Americans at greater risk for accelerated aging and premature physical decline. This is the same process outlined by Arlene Geronimus, named, quote, weathering, end quote, decades ago. The body basically breaks down faster when it is never allowed to fully recover. One of the heaviest things the body is asked to carry without nearly enough space to put it down is grief.
There's a lot of reasons why we haven't or we don't feel our grief. And a lot of us, we talk about what we've learned. We may have learned that there's not space enough for our grief, that our grief, by the larger context in the larger society, a lot of us get told that our grief is dangerous. When we display our grief, we're going to be punished for our grief. I think that's especially true for Black people and Black communities, that our grief has been policed and criminalized. And that gets ingrained in our own communities and our own families. You've got to tighten up in whatever way. You can't go out there. You have to be able to comport and control yourselves in certain ways because of the danger that you're perceived as. And at the same time, unprocessed grief, I'm experiencing this personally in my own family, and I bet there's a lot of people that can relate, but unprocessed grief over time, it fractures our relationships with each other. It fractures our relationships with ourselves, that there's hurt that is not metabolized, there's grief that is not metabolized, there's loss that is not metabolized. And each one of us in a different way is trying to cope with all that we're holding that has not been reckoned with, and that drives us further and further away from each other.
So how do we begin to process our grief? Hemphill offers 3 entry points.
I think one, find a part of your body or a place in your body or a way of being in your body that you actually enjoy. It's like, I really enjoy my hands, or I really enjoy the way my belly feels, whatever it might be. Find a place on you that you really enjoy And I think find out what you enjoy about it, and let it just be a way to start getting more connected to the sensations of your body. Because a lot of us don't know that constantly our body is responding. And if we tuned in, there's a ton of signals and sensations and messages and responses that are happening. Even as you're listening to me right now, your body's probably popping off in a million different ways. And you might interpret it as, I like that, I don't like that, I'm upset by that, that reminds me of something. But before you get to interpretation, there's just sensation. It's just your body moving around and processing and releasing chemicals. And eventually we want to get, I think, to that state where we can kind of just bear witness to all the life that's in us, all that's moving in us. So I think the other practice I would say is finding a practice of stillness, whatever that might be for you. And that can be really hard for people, so not pressing it, but a place of stillness where you can just notice those sensations. I do a grounding practice that I lead people through that just kind of acquaints them with their sensations in their bodies. But see if you can become the witness of the sensations in your body. Like, notice what is happening in you. And you might just notice one little thing. Oh, my fingertips feel cold, or oh, my belly's digesting. And you might start to take that into the world, or notice, oh, when that person talks to me, I feel this in my chest. Before you interpret it, just notice and just start to notice that. So finding a still place. And the last thing I'll really say, because I think it's just so important for culture, is moving to music. We sometimes overcomplicate somatics and embodiment. And I'd be like, dancing is the most profound embodiment practice there is. And we don't even have to make it complicated. But joining yourself with rhythm, expressing your emotions through song can be really, really helpful, I think, for people who have things to process. As a kid, I used to I remember I was grieving and I would listen to sad songs and just dance all my grief out. We dance, we come from dance. We have dance in our culture, but inside of this society, it gets a little bit co-opted into strictly this or that, or sexualization, whatever it might be. But there's a full range of our expression in music, and just finding something that at the end of the day expresses how you feel. Or if you're moving through something big, find some music that accompanies you, that lets you dislodge whatever it is that you might be holding. I think practices like that are very, very important for us.
For communities facing structural harm, this work is both necessary and incomplete without the larger systems changing. Hemphill holds both truths at once.
So, that's why I always say it's important for us to understand that this work is both the internal work that we must do, the relational work that we have to do, and it's also the working conditions. Because if you can't feed your children, that's not a chronic stress you're necessarily just going to be able to breathe away. But at the same time, a lot of us are carrying old stuff.
You can learn more about Prentice Hemphill's work and the Embodiment Institute at www.embodimentinstitute.org. Their book, What It Takes to Heal, How Transforming Ourselves Can Save the World, is available now at your favorite bookstore. They also host a podcast called What Bodies Know. For Focus Black Oklahoma, I'm Alana Mbanza in Danville, Illinois.
What does it mean to live in a place that was never meant to feel like home? Across the country, extended stay hotels have become a last resort for individuals and families navigating housing instability. Behind those doors are stories often overlooked of stress, isolation, resilience, and the quiet toll that instability takes on mental health. For those living on the margins, where access to care is limited and community can feel out of reach, how do people cope, and what support truly exists?
There's this idea that Everyone who's experiencing homelessness is suffering from mental illness or a substance use disorder. We certainly know that there are higher rates of mental illness and substance use among folks experiencing homelessness, but not high enough to explain homelessness.
Sabina Brown is the Housing Senior Policy Analyst with the Oklahoma Policy Institute.
One thing I think we don't talk enough about is the impact that homelessness has on mental health and how it can lead to mental health problems and substance use disorders. If you think about somebody constantly struggling every day just to meet their basic needs or worrying about just surviving, of course that's going to have an effect on someone's mental health. And even if mental health is at the root of someone's homelessness or their substance use is contributing to their homelessness, it doesn't change the fact that they need a home. It is really hard to adequately treat someone's mental illness or to treat their substance use disorder when they don't even have a safe place to sleep at night.
A case study based in Denver was published in 2025, following 356 people for 1 year after losing housing, and found that 64% reported their physical health deteriorated, 58% said their mental health declined, and 53% had experienced violence.
I met her on the overpass. Heather had a hoodie on, hood up, over a knit cap, red gloves. I saw she had just one tooth left. She told me she'd had a place to sleep the past 2 nights, but that arrangement was over. She was looking for something to eat. She said I shared a name with her brother, something about him being an athlete, football. She was shouting into the wind over the traffic. I only caught parts of it. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. She asked, "Do you know any Native people?" I mentioned a friend in Pahuska. She said, "My boyfriend, Sammy, is Native in Bristow." Heather told me that a few years earlier, Sammy woke up in his car with blisters covering his leg. Frostbite. She told me that Sammy once accidentally shot himself in a motel, something about his femur. Heather said she nursed him back to health, then she had to go. As we spoke,
this pretty lady dances.
Rob was watching Tammy's belongings, a small bag beside him on the step, waiting for her to return.
She dances. She's a prostitute. She's pregnant right now. She already told me her story, but she usually dances. So she ain't dancing right now because she needs some alcohol or some drugs or some shit.
Tammy didn't want to be recorded, but we sat on the stoop a while. She kept apologizing for how bad her dog, Maddie, smelled. She said she needed to get the dog into foster care because she couldn't take care of it anymore. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her bag. I couldn't follow. It had something to do with an address she needed to visit or a phone number she needed to call. Tammy told me she's around 50. She said she tends to sabotage everything.
I mean, if you think about somebody constantly struggling every day just to meet their basic needs or worrying about just surviving, of course that's going to have an effect on someone's mental health.
This Quick Hit is a segment from a special episode of Focus Black Oklahoma, which is part of a larger quarterly effort from Oklahoma media addressing mental health. Find the rest of the quarterly stories and more coverage from Tulsa Flyer, the Oklahoma Eagle, KOSU, La Semana, and the Frontier at tulsaflyer.org.
Thanks for joining us on Focus Black Oklahoma.
Would you like to pitch a story to FBO?
Or work with us as a correspondent?
Please email us at contact@focusblackoklahoma.com.
Or call 918-807-3886.
History often reaches us through textbooks, photographs, and commemorations. But sometimes the most powerful connection to the past comes through a voice. We turn to rare audio recordings of civil rights icon Clara Luper and her daughter Marilyn Luper Hildreth, as they reflect on their experiences in the Oklahoma City civil rights movement and the convictions that drove their activism.
When we left Oklahoma City, we had the opportunity, most of us had never been out of Oklahoma. And most of us knew that we knew we were black and we couldn't eat anywhere. And we thought it was like that all over the world. So we went the northern route to New York City. And for the first time in many of our lives, we had the opportunity to go into an establishment, sit down and order a Coke, and could sit there like normal people. We didn't have to stand up outdoors or just stand up at the counter, wait from everybody else and drink their Coke, but we actually could sit down. And then we could actually go to a bathroom without it being said colored or white. We could go to a bathroom, a telephone booth, a water fountain. We went to New York City and performed a play. And on our way back, we came back through the South. A real awakening. We're back home, you guys. We were treated like we were inferior. No, we could not, on the way back home, go into an eating establishment with dignity and pride and sit down and eat.
And we believe that if Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and others that believed in nonviolence, if it would work for them, it would also work for us. We believed it.
So when we came back to Oklahoma City, we started negotiating with the restaurants here, and for 15 months we negotiated with them, trying to get them to open their doors to everybody. But let me backtrack. It was always taught to us that a little bit of freedom is a dangerous thing. When we found out that we could be treated like everybody else and that we could sit down and eat in places like everybody else, boy, it made all the difference in the world. And when we came back to Oklahoma, we were dissatisfied with the conditions of our state and of our city. So after we kept negotiating with the restaurants here, we were meeting at 1819 Northeast Park at our regular Monday night NAACP Youth Council meeting, and we were discussing what we should do. And it was my suggestion that we would just go down there and sit until they decide to serve us. No apparent reason why, just sit. And eventually they're gonna get tired of us and they're gonna let us eat or drink a Coke.
As if God had spoken to us. Say, keep on, don't quit now, keep on. And that's what we did. We kept on trying. And the walls of segregation would finally fall. The people who wanted a change, but who was afraid. Every time I would pass by a restaurant, pass by and see other people eating, in my mind, why can't I eat it? Why can't my kids eat? Why? And I would ask questions and got no answers. That's the way it is. And that's the way it has always been. And what we can do is we tried everything else. Let's try nonviolence. And this is what we did. I remember a desire to keep on. And changes in America have been brought because of people that didn't quit. For example, I looked at the women's movement. Those people didn't quit. If they had quit, women would not be able to vote today. and run for office. So I kept moving. I didn't send them. I went along with them. Because if anything had happened to my students, I wanted it to happen to me. But the people really didn't care. Did they care? As long as their kids were eating, and as long as we did not rock the boat. But we rocked the boat. We did it with songs and prayers and scriptures. We kept trying day in and day out.
Okay, runners. Okay, I'm ready. Hey, my name is Roma Carter. I am a Booker T and TU alum and currently interning at Focus Black, Oklahoma. I'm specifically interested in local environmental reporting, audio engineering, and improving media literacy. In my free time, I like to skate, jam out, and dress with intention. My favorite quote, "The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion," by French journalist Albert Camus. My passion is to add meaning and distinction to any and every room I get to be in. And that's a little bit about me. Peace out. Focus Black Oklahoma is produced in partnership with KOSU Radio and Tri-City Collective.
Additional support is provided by the Commemoration Fund and Press Forward.
Our theme music is by Moffat Music.
Focus Black Oklahoma's executive producers are
Karesh Ali Lansana and Bracken Clark.
Our associate producers are Jesse Ulrich and Naomi Agnew.
Our production interns are Jess Grimes, Roma Carter, and Anna Wilson. You can visit us online at kosu.org or focusblackoklahoma.com and on YouTube at Tri-City Collective OK.
You can follow us on Instagram at FocusBlackOK and on Facebook at facebook.com/FocusBlackOK.
You can hear Focus Black Oklahoma on demand at kosu.org, the NPR app,
npr.org,
or wherever you get your podcasts.